Good morning, Year 6, Chapter 17 of The Lion Boy. The lights came up, the applause died down. The audience were drifting up the grand staircase, saying, "Wasn't that fantastic? Wasn't that wonderful? That bit when the, and how about when the, and the girl? I've never seen anything like it." The last sparks of fireworks were drifting back down to sink in murky waters of the canal basin. Charlie, out on deck, invisible in the shadows, heard them pop and fizz. He saw Mabel and Makomo, heads together, emerging from the main entrance with the crowd. Ruffy was with them. He sauntered a step or two behind, with the dog Troy on a lead. Every now and again he leaned forward to say something. When he did, Makomo turned back to him with a smile. Charlie, keeping himself invisible in the crowd behind them, got the impression that Makomo had arranged to meet Ruffy, but didn't want him hanging around. He was being polite enough. It wasn't often that Makomo took the trouble to be polite. The trio headed out onto the gangplank. Go on, breathed Charlie. They were leaving. Charlie nipped through the crowd and out into the gardens where he was able to overtake them. Lurking in the shadow of the shrubbery, he could see their faces in the crowd. Mabel looked annoyed. She'd wanted to be alone with Makomo. Ruffy had moved up between her and the lion tamer, and he was saying something. As they passed by Charlie's hiding place, Charlie strained to hear, but he couldn't make anything out. Then the men turned and, excusing themselves from Mabel, moved away from the path, the light and the crowd. Charlie melted into the darkness. They were coming towards him, his heart panting. He slipped behind a tree. Ruffy and Makomo, in the shadows, hidden from the crowded path by a bush, were standing and pretending to pee. Charlie could see and hear them clearly. He could only hope that they could not see or hear him. He breathed lightly and gently. His asthma had passed, and he felt fit and strong and ready. "So, Makomo," Ruffy was saying, "if your lion boy can do what you say, then obviously I have clients who would be interested in that. And genuine, unusual talent. Genetic variation skills, that kind of thing can always sell. You know that, but I've got to know that it's genuine. I can't turn up with some trick. This is science, not the circus. Know what I mean? So you enjoy your dinner with your young lady." Here Ruffy seemed to suppress a laugh. "And tomorrow I'll come and have a look at him, and we'll see what we can do. All right?" Charlie, deep in the shadows, gave a dark smile. So that was it. Makomo had told Ruffy about the cat speaking. Ruffy sells skills and talents, so Ruffy had stolen his parents in order to sell them on. And now Ruffy wants to buy him, to sell him on too. What to? Who to? The same people who have his parents? That'd be one way of getting to where they were. Daft, but Ruffy obviously didn't know that the cat-speaking lion boy is Charlie Ashanti. How long before Makomo lets slip Charlie's name, and Ruffy realizes that the boy with the talent is also the boy he was after anyway. The moment Makomo tells Ruffy my name, thought Charlie, I am deep doo-doo. Ruffy was still talking. "So my compliments to Miss Stark," he said smoothly, "and I'll see you tomorrow." They started to move away towards the bright lights. "By the way," said Ruffy, "where is he now?" "What, the lion boy," said Makomo in his soft voice. "He'll be back on the boat somewhere, maybe with the lions." "What's his name?" said Ruffy. "Charlie, C.H.Arlie." "Charlie what?" said Ruffy, with a sudden keen look. Charlie turned. He heard Mabel's voice behind him calling, "Come on, Makomo, what's keeping you?" He ran, quicker than Ruffy, because only Charlie knew that the race was on. Straight to the ship, straight to the lion cabin. 6 set of yellow eyes greeted him in the darkness of the cabin, and a new kind of energy awoken him. He took the big heavy old key from his hook and unlocked the cages. "How goes it, lion boy?" came the voice of the oldest lion. "Fine," said Charlie shortly. "Ruffy is here. We're off. Now!" The oldest lion heard the urgency in his voice. "Ride the young lion," he said. "Quicker." Charlie didn't hesitate. It was true, a lion could not hide so well in the shadows with a boy on his back, but it was even truer that a boy is slower than a lion. He grabbed his jacket, shouldered his bag, gave the young lion a grin, and slipped out of the door to the cabin. All was quiet outside, just as he expected, but Ruffy was out there and coming after them. Charlie made himself look around carefully before letting the lion slide out, then closed the door again behind them and locked it. He remembered his mum's lab door swinging open when it should have been shut, right at the beginning of this adventure, his first warning of danger. His heart was pounding like a woodpecker, quick, light, relentless. Charlie could hardly see the lions as they slunk against the walls of the cabins in the dark areas where neither moonlight nor lamplight fell. Over by the gangplank, the sound of voices and activity bustled and hummed. Laughter came across the water, and the lights twinkled. Way above, along the boulevard, above the basin, street lights and people and traffic were going about their business. Behind them lay the ship and the canal and the way that they'd come so far. Ahead of them lay the run down to where the canal met the river, then the river itself, which they had to cross to get to the station. The rest of the night was dark and quiet, cool and damp and rivery. The moon was still low. The lions hooded their eyes and disappeared, no more than dark shadows themselves, as they guided along the stern, breathing fresh air for the first time in months. It took no more than seconds for them to slide over onto the rope, a few seconds more to slither across the rope to the shore. They didn't give a second glance to the dark space between the ship and the quayside, to the gleaming cold water at the bottom of the deep abyss, or the slimy green weed shining slippery on the wall of the quay. Charlie, for a horrible moment, wondered how he was meant to get across. Could he clamber across the horrible gap, clutching the nasty, rough, slippery, salty rope? The young lion was beside him. "Oh," he hissed, his breath warm in the darkness, and Charlie was glad to climb on his long back and lie clasped to him, smelling the warm, sweet, furry smell, and feeling the muscles move beneath him as the lion, like a river-made flesh, slid over the railings and across the rope. "Go, go," hissed Charlie, his hands caught up in the young lion's shaky mane, his legs clutching tight on the golden back. Ruffy could be under any tree, behind any bush. With any luck, he was on the ship, trying and failing to get into the lion cabin, but who could count on luck? The young lion began to run, and Charlie realized he was panting. There was the shrubbery and the shadows. He had counted on being safe hiding in the shadows, but now the shadows themselves held danger. There was a shout behind them, angry, violent. His name, "Charlie, Charlie, you little scumbag!" "Raffy, definitely." "Ignore it," Charlie cried. "Go on." The lions were quicker than Raffy. Best to race ahead. "Faster," he hissed in the young lion's ear, and the young lion ran. So did the oldest lion. So did Alcina. The lionesses did not. They growled. Behind him, as he hurtled through the damp night air, Charlie heard another shout, a cry, a scream, a dreadful scream, and a splash. It chilled his soul. He tried to look over his shoulder. "What was that?" he yelled. The young lion didn't slacken. "Stop," Charlie shrieked. "Don't!" He didn't even know quite whom he was yelling to or what he was telling them to stop. All he knew, deep inside him, was the dreadfulness of that scream. Until he heard it, it had not occurred to him that the lions might not agree with him, might not obey him. Not really. Now that single sound reminded him, these are wild animals. They hunt for food. They've been locked up for years. That's an enemy chasing after them. "Shut up," panted the young lion. "Shut up. Never mind." "Never mind?" Charlie closed his eyes and hung on for dear life. He had never seen the lions out in the open, with room enough to pick up some pace. They were quick. They were in the park alongside the Porta di Palacion in no time, hugging the walls and sprinting the gaps. Rose bushes dangled their flowers above them. The high wall was to their left, and the moored boats down to their right. In moments they reached the end of the park. "We must go back," Charlie thought. "We must go back. That was a human being." Yet, but it was Raffy, and Raffy wounded and in the water was better than Raffy strong and angry and coming after them. Of course, they could not go back. Under the high walls at the far end of the basin, the lions ran swift and silent over the cobbles, avoiding iron rings set in for boats to moor to, and bollards lurking in the dim light. The noise of the traffic drifted down to them from the boulevard as they lurched along in the deep basin. The old stone wall was set with iron gates and mysterious doorways racing past. Charlie had no time to wonder where they led. He just held on tight. A flurry of ducks, disturbed and quacking, scurried into the water with an unnaturally loud splashing. The final lock before the canal met the river sign was under a road bridge. Sign said "No entry." The lions swiftly sneaked under the bar and brought themselves to a halt in the silent darkness on the narrow footpath beside the canal under the bridge. "What happened?" gasped Charlie. "What have they done?" The oldest lion gave him a curious look. "That was your enemy," he said. "The one who stole your parents, you said. The one who threatens you." "Yes," said Charlie, puzzled. "It didn't seem that simple, though." "Yes, but..." What if Raffy were dead, if he didn't want to say it out loud? The young lion cocked his head. Alcina was breathing fast and smooth, looking back to where her mother must be. And where were the lionesses? They all stared back the way they had come. No sound, nothing to be seen. The lock was right beside them, horribly deep and horribly dark and shiny and close. The drop into the river beyond the pale green metal lock gates was even deeper and darker. Trickles of water seeped through the metal plates, making a small echoey noise. On one side of the thin-looking gates was high dark water, on the other a deep drop into blackness. Charlie, rolling from the young lion's back, kept himself close to the wall. He was grateful to find a cold, narrow metal handrail to hold on to. All they needed now was for someone to fall into that black abyss. He was glad that they only had to go alongside the canal. Crossing it would have been even worse. They breathed and rested for a moment. Above them, beyond the road bridge, there was a second bridge over the canal, and then almost immediately another. They had to pass under all three before they got to the river, wide and swift and dark. "Charlie," said the oldest lion. At the moment, a thundery dragon roared across the next bridge. Instinctively, they all flattened against the damp wall, staring widely at the monster as it passed. A few of the monster's eyes stared back. It was a metro train full of people going home late. Some of them, staring out of the window into the night, saw the reflected gleam of 6 yellow eyes, but they would never guess what it was they had seen. "Before another one comes," the older lion hissed. "But the lionesses," cried Charlie, his voice tangled. "Trust them," said the oldest lion. "They're hunters. You mustn't be caught." Charlie was now comforted to hear that they were hunters. "Have they eaten him?" he whispered. Though Raffy was his enemy and meant nothing but harm, he couldn't bear the thought. "We are lions, Charlie," the oldest lion said softly. "We hunt. We eat." Charlie stared at him. Everywhere he looked in himself he saw fear. "But we are not stupid," the oldest lion continued. "We eat at leisure, not when we are escaping with our lives. We do not eat humans on human territory. We are not stupid." Charlie gulped. He was fooling himself if he thought he was in charge of anything here. "Onward," said the oldest lion. Just by the stern of the Circe, a lumbering, splitting shape was emerging from the dark, cold water, shattering the reflections of street lights and circus lights into 1,000 wet showers across the surface. His white hands clutched the stone blocks lining the quay, and he pulled himself heavily out of the water. His leather coat was sodden, and his face furious. His movements were stilted. One of his arms was weak, and his hand he clutched a small clump of something wet and dark, a tiny handful of dark golden fur, sodden with the canal water. As he came to standing, he wiped his pale face with his good arm, and then touched the bad arm. Even in the dim light, he could see on his fingers that the water dripping off him was mixed with blood. "Troy," he bellowed. A big slavering dog loppered up to him. He held out the clump of soggy fur to the animal's twitching nose. "Fetch," he said, and his voice was grim. Charlie climbed slowly back into the young lion's back. Though the young lion was sure-footed, the tow path was narrowing and the water seemed just too close now. As the lion lopped along, the black water raced past just beneath his right foot. Between the road bridge and the metro bridge, a metal spiral staircase led up to the street level to the left. A group of people went past on the road up there, laughing and playing around. Charlie and the lion stuck swiftly under the black industrial-looking girders of the metro bridge. Had they been seen? A pigeon, confused by the presence there so late at night, flew suddenly out, flapping and flustering. Some saw black fluttery shapes moved in the darkness. Bats. Another small gap of sky, and there was the third and final bridge over the canal, much bigger, more modern looking. The young lion and Alcina stopped abruptly. The oldest lion just behind caught up with them. The tow path, when they finally turned the corner and emerged from under the flyover, led onto a tiny narrow ledge at the base of the great high concrete wall, which separated the flyover from the river, and the ledge led to the bridge. But on and on as far as they could see, struck between the deep mobile water at the Sino on the right and the 12-metre sheer wall sloping up to the left. It was about half a metre wide. The bridge they needed, the bridge which crossed the river, was only a couple of 100 metres away, but it was also a couple of 100 metres above them, and there was no way up. Charlie stared at it. The lion stared at it. Charlie remembered again how his dad said it was good not to swear, because that way you kept the swear words for when you really needed one. Charlie swore.